The Gold Lord took me to the banquet, and I had a big fight with his Bai Yueguang. He dragged me out of the scuffle. I looked at him coldly with my messy hair. You're pulling the shelf. He was silent. I took off the ring and threw it in his face. I dumped you. I'm Angelo Walkley's canary and have been with him for 3 years. He is good looking, rich, and good lived. And he is generous to me. The only requirement is that he can't shoot kiss scenes. For this reason, I lost some of my acting skills. And I was also scolded by many people for being fake King Gao. But I don't care. I have always been a man who has always kept to himself, and has never caused trouble to him. It's just that I didn't expect that the first time I added trouble, it would add a big one. I beat Bai Yueguang, who had just returned to China. It started when Angelo Walkley asked me to accompany him to a party. I have never been able to integrate into the circle of these wealthy and aristocratic families, and I wanted to refuse. But I haven't seen him for 3 months while filming in other places, and it's true that I want to see him, so I went anyway. Unexpectedly, I subconsciously avoided people I didn't want to see, but they were always reluctant to let me go. I just went to the little garden to catch my breath, and Denise Beecher and Don Esther followed. Denise Becker is Angelo Walkley's childhood sweetheart, who emigrated overseas with her family a few years ago because of the family business and only recently returned to China. And Don Esther is my sworn enemy, and she usually buys me black drafts and black hot searches. Unexpectedly, the two actually knew each other. I sat on the bench and didn't want to move. Don Esther held her fingers and scolded, "Why? Isn't it Gerald Goldsmith's engagement party today? How can anyone attend?" Denise Becker glanced at me and said in a flat tone, "Didn't you pull me over to have something to say?" "That's all." Don Esther smiled at her. "Denise Becker, don't worry, it's so stuffy inside. We just came out to breathe, and talked while walking Tilda." Denise Becker didn't say anything, leaning against the edge of the pool. "Denise Becker, are you and Angelo Walkley going to get married?" "Well, it's almost decided." "Great. Talented women are a natural pair, and some people who don't have long eyes should also get acquainted and leave." Denise Becker didn't speak. Don Esther continued. I didn't bother to listen, turned around and wanted to leave, but her next words stopped me. "Some people not only can't get on the stage themselves, but even their families are in a mess. And when the project happened, how many people lost their jobs? And if I want to say that the person in charge broke a leg, it is retribution." I walked out and walked up and slapped her twice, and Don Esther covered her face and glared at me. "Nina Tommy, are you crazy?" I sneered. "Just chew your tongue behind your back. Do you think I don't dare to hit you in front of me?" Denise Becker frowned at me. "Nina Tommy, this is the Goldsmith family. Have you thought about the consequences of such an outrageous behavior?" My eyes lit up. "Denise Becker, if your parents are poked in the back like this, I hope you can also think rationally about the consequences first." Denise Beecher didn't speak, but Don Esther reached for my hair, and we scuffled together. But I don't know how Denise Beecher got in. But when Angelo Walkley came over, the 3 of us were in a mess. Angelo Walkley pulled me out of the scuffle with a black face. I was in a state of embarrassment, but the situation was much better for Denise Becker on the other side. I coldly confronted Angelo Walkley. "You're pulling the shelf." His brow furrowed and he was silent. I took off the ring in my hand, and smashed it in his face. "I dumped you." After saying that, he ran out of the door with a sigh of breath and went straight into the taxi that had just stopped. But in the end, I couldn't hold back my crying, and my heart was overwhelmed by huge grievances. As soon as I finished yesterday, I came to see him with a lot of longing, and I didn't say a few words, but I was humiliated by others and pulled him aside. The phone kept vibrating. It was Angelo Walkley's call. I picked it up and preemptively said, "The house in South Bay Court is in my name. You move out within a week." After saying that, he hung up the phone and blocked all his contact information. Dog man. I ended up with him. I didn't go back to Nanwan Court, so I found a hotel to stay in. After taking a shower and calming down, I vaguely realized that something was wrong. I should be the first canary who dares to drive the Gold Lord out. Now I'm getting more and more bold with Angelo Walkley, and I'm the one who only promised in the first place. The first time I met Angelo Walkley was at a cocktail party. where I was forced by my agent to curry favor with some big directors and investors. My family was in good condition, but during that time, my father's project went wrong, and he not only broke a leg, but also took all the family's savings to compensate his co-workers. The family owes a huge amount of foreign debt, and my parents are anxious every day. I wanted to help subsidize my family, but I was tricked into signing an overlord contract by a talent scout, and not only did I have no resources, but I also had to be dragged to accompany the wine. I don't have the capital to default, and I dodged a few times by pretending to be sick and selling stupidly, until that time, had to go. Pushing open the private room, there were several middle-aged men sitting inside, but Angelo Walkley, who was in the main seat, was a clear stream and was particularly conspicuous. It's just that he was about to leave as soon as I went, so I hurriedly followed. I asked him, "Boss, can I follow you?" He was a lot taller than me, and he looked down at me. What? I looked the best to mess with. Of the crowd, he looked the worst to mess with, but I didn't dare to say. I shook my head and said sincerely, "You're the best looking." Angelo Walkley scoffed. I know. I saw his impatience and said, "You're the best of a good guy." He smirked. "Then you're out of sight." Then he left, and I was dragged back by the agent. I was poured a lot of wine in the private room until a fat-headed, big-eared director touched my thigh, and I struggled desperately and knocked over the glass. He slapped me, scolded me for not knowing what to do, and pulled my clothes as he spoke. In desperation, I picked up a fragment of the glass and plunged it into his thigh. I felt like I was going to jail. Then the private room door was pushed open, and Angelo Walkley stood outside. He glanced into the private room, and the director, who was originally screaming like killing a pig, simply stopped. "Don't you want to follow me?" "Still not yet." I threw the splinters into his arms, shaking so hard that I couldn't stand until he carried me away. Angelo Walkley took me back to South Bay Court. I had already taken a shower at night, but I didn't dare to go out in the bathroom all the time, hearing him talking on the phone outside. He was settling things out tonight. When the talking stopped, I walked out with a bath towel around. He leaned lazily back on the couch, his white shirt unbuttoned, his delicate collarbone looming. I walked up to him, and plucked up the courage to tear off the towel, but I didn't dare to look up. He got up and picked up the bath towel, and put it on me again, laughing. "I'm not old, but I have a lot of tricks." I blushed like blood and stumbled. I haven't been with anyone I don't know." Process. "Look up. Look at me." I pinched the towel and dared to look at him. The person on the other side had a calm brow, and there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. "Charming and dangerous. Trust me so much. Aren't you afraid I'm more perverted than them?" Shocked at the bottom of my heart, I was in a hurry and patted my ass. "No, good-looking people are kind." He laughed, put his arm around me, and kissed me down. The first time I kissed, I just felt dizzy. He rubbed his fingertips lightly against my lips and whispered, "Go to sleep." "Do you dare to sleep alone?" I nodded confusedly. "Heh, that's your attitude towards people." The tail note rose to warn of danger, and I hugged him. "Don't dare. You have to sleep with it." He stuffed me into the quilt satisfied, went out on the phone by himself, and came back half an hour later to put his arms around me and sleep. I watched the news every day for those days, but there wasn't any news about me online. A week later, my overlord contract was terminated. Angelo Walkley arranged me with a new agency and agent, and the director who wanted to sneak me disappeared from the circle. In the past 3 years, Angelo Walkley has given me the resources that are most suitable for me. I worked steadily, and was promoted from an 18th-tier actress to a 2nd-tier flower. The family's foreign debts have all been paid off, and my parents have opened a small shop in their hometown. As if everything is getting better positively, only I know that it's getting worse and worse, because I'm getting deeper and deeper into Angelo Walkley. He is my benefactor, but I always subconsciously regard him as a lover. I don't know when it started. Falling in love with Angelo Walkley was so easy. When I woke up the next day, I found that there were hundreds of missed calls on my phone, most of which were from Michael, the agent. I didn't know what was going on, so I quickly dialed back, and Michael's loud voice drove me away. "My ancestor, you finally answered the phone. Do you know that the world has turned upside down? What the hell did you do last night? What the hell is going on? I'm all blind. And I took a look at the hot search on the phone. Pound 9 Tommy hits Don Esther. Pound 9 Tommy get out of the shobia. Pound 9 Tommy is out of the loop. Last night's argument with Don Esther was videotaped. But I was the only one who suddenly rushed up and hit her for a few seconds. I closed my eyes and explained to Michael the cause and effect, including the fact that Angelo Walkley and I had broken up. After all, there will be no money owner to support me in the future. Michael was silent for a long time, and sighed, you rest first these days. Don't watch the news. I'll find a way. I hung up the phone and took a closer look at the hot search video, which was a very hidden angle, and it looked premeditated, because Denise Beecher standing next to me was cut, and there were only me and Don Esther in the picture. The comments are all one-sided. Look at Nina Tommy's snarky appearance. She still dares to hit someone. No one dares to expose her. I heard that there is a big financier behind her, otherwise her acting skills are so poor. But her resources have been soaring in recent years. Inside information. The stand-in raised by the big guy. Now that the main owner is back, she has been kicked. Looking at those stand-in comments, you know that Don Esther is leading public opinion again. But I don't have any waves in my heart. If you want to scold me, scold me. You should bear this bowl of rice, as long as you don't bring your family. As for the stand-in, it's pure nonsense. When I first met Angelo Walkley, he was so nice to me that I was a little scared. One time he came to pick me up at dinner, and I asked him if I looked like someone he knew. He took me in his arms, and flicked it on my head, addicted to acting. Scapegoat, I don't do that. I had to ask him if he had anyone else, and he scoffed. I look idle. I was happy for a long time to get an affirmative answer. Angelo Walkley may not really love me much. Maybe it's fresh. Maybe it's too lazy to change. It doesn't matter. At least during the time we were together, there was no third person. I cannot be loved. I cannot be firmly chosen. But I can't not have the last shred of dignity. Because of the sudden negative news, the original variety show itinerary was also cancelled. Now I stay in the hotel every day and don't dare to go out, because I'm really afraid of black powder. 2 years ago, I played a crazy villain. That character was beautiful and crazy, and I portrayed it so well that netizens called me not like acting. But I didn't expect anyone to really rise to the level of an actor. Someone took advantage of my leg injury, and threw a hornet's nest at me, in an attempt to disfigure me. Fortunately, Angelo Walkley came quickly. He set his suit on fire to drive away the hornet, and hundreds of thousands of couture were gone. I shook my head. How did I think of him again? Pick up your phone to see missed calls and Weshit messages. All friends encourage and comfort, but there is no Angelo Walkley. I realized it in hindsight that I blocked him. All contact information. I got angry with myself and threw away my phone. He has such a big ability. If he wants to find it, he won't find it. He just doesn't care. Sitting by the window, I felt conflicted and hypocritical. I know it's impossible, but I subconsciously hold expectations. I always felt that he should like me a little bit too. After all, he also came to accompany me on the night of the reunion of 10,000 families. In my first New Year's with Angelo Walkley, I didn't go back to my hometown because of my tight schedule, but stayed at South Bay Court. On Chinese New Year's Eve, I was sleeping in a daze, and suddenly I heard the sound of the door opening, which frightened me to bounce up from the bed, take a lamp and quietly open the door. Angelo Walkley stood in the hallway, snow still on her shoulders. He looked at the lamp in my hand, and raised his eyebrows and smiled. You welcome me so much for the Chinese New Year. I threw away the lamp and jumped on him. I wanted to ask him why he came over suddenly, but I felt like he didn't want to listen. So the words in his mouth turned around. Why did you appear when I thought of you? He carried me to the bedroom and teased in my ear. Let me see where I think. The cold wind was raging outside, and the inside of the house was hot. By the time he came out of the shower, I was so tired that I was almost asleep. In a daze, he stuffed a red envelope under my pillow, and a kiss on his forehead. Happy New Year, Nina Tommy. The first New Year without my parents. I was never alone. I stayed in the hotel for 3 days, and I was going to go out to buy something, but I was dissuaded by Michael's news. The news of my fight for Don Esther has been fermenting for a few days and has not been suppressed, and new black material has been exposed. The director who was stabbed by me came out and hammered me, saying that I had tried to seduce him in exchange for resources, but then climbed into a new funder. He didn't dare to say who the owner was. He only said that he had been suppressed and hidden over the years, and he also cited a series of evidence, which was true and false. Michael was so anxious that she couldn't hold down the news alone. Nina Tommy, can't you really contact Angelo Walkley? Bow your head to him. That's what he does with his fingers. I was silent, and my nose suddenly became sour. This kind of non-existent news has not appeared before, but it was suppressed before fermentation, and this time it is getting more and more prosperous. I whispered, he won't care about me anymore. He's going to get married, and I broke off with him, this time to be in his own right. Michael sighed. If this incident can't be resolved positively, you probably won't have a job for a long time. It's okay, Michael. I'll send a clarification later. Believe it or not, and I don't want to fall into the cycle of self-proof. Thank you for the past few years. It's me who has been a burden to you. Michael comforted me and said he tried his best, but I knew it would be hard. I watched the news and they were all scolding me. Why hasn't this kind of bad artist been banned? It's disgusting. I said before that she climbed to the gold master. Otherwise, with her rotten acting skills, she could get to today's position. Now why doesn't the gold owner care about her? I guess I'm tired of it. I'm so curious. Who is the gold owner? I fell in love with her blindly. Didn't you say that the gold lord has white moonlight? She won't be 3. Her father seems to be a black-hearted contractor, and the upper beam is really crooked. There were also those who spoke up for me, but they were quickly drowned in the tide of bad comments. I went on to my Weibo account and edited the text. Hello everyone, I'm Nina Tommy. I'm sorry for taking up public resources because of personal issues, but the matter has been fermenting so far. I still hope you can find out the truth of the matter. First of all, I'm not related to Solomon, and there's no seduction. When he first entered the industry, he was ignorant and was tricked into signing the Overlord Treaty. The agent forced me to accompany the drink, and Solomon wanted to sneak me, so I stabbed him in the thigh with a glass shard to defend myself with a prison mentality, so that I could get away with it. He didn't give up if he didn't sneak into me, and turned to other little girls, who had just started in the industry. I don't know how many innocent girls there were, but I once saved 2. I don't want to express anything when I say this. I just hope that everyone will recognize the scum. The girl I saved didn't have to speak up for me, and such a thing didn't deserve to be mentioned repeatedly. Secondly, please come at me with any malice. Don't involve my family. They don't mess with any of you. If the mouth is still not clean, I sincerely pray for a rebound from everything you say. In the end, I haven't been a 3. I haven't been a stand-in, and now we have broken up. Thank you for your patience. I wrote a statement that I didn't want to do, and I turned off my phone when I was done. Leaning back on the bay window, I didn't do anything, but I felt so tired. Before I knew it, I fell asleep and had a dream. At that time, my career was on the rise, and Michael gave me a movie that was a big hit, and even though I was only a supporting role, it was very likable. So I took advantage of the popularity to pick up variety shows and advertisements, and met an old acquaintance, Solomon. When I was having dinner with investors, he was not a director. He became a producer, and he also changed his name. As I passed by that day, I was stumbling into a little girl running out of his private room, disheveled. I held the little girl behind me, and held up my phone to him, and the little girl said that there was another one in the private room. I brought everyone out. He knew that Angelo Walkley was behind me, and didn't dare touch me. I knew that this might cause trouble for Angelo Walkley, and if he didn't leave me alone, I might be in big trouble. But there was no time to think too much about it at the time. If I hadn't encountered it, I wouldn't have been able to control it, but if I did, I would have turned a blind eye to it, and I would not have been able to live the rest of my life. There was no news from the 2 little girls, and they all withdrew from the circle. Later, I told Angelo Walkley about it, thinking that he might rebuke me, but he laughed and said that I had a bad temper. In the end, he only told me not to do this kind of thing next time, because the dog will jump off the wall when he is in a hurry. I was indeed afraid. but I was faintly stubborn. Such an inexplicable hardness comes from Angelo Walkley. When I first entered the circle, I had no fame or identity, and not too many people knew about my relationship with Angelo Walkley. So when filming, I am often bullied as a newcomer. I don't want to get into trouble. I think I won't lose a piece of meat if I say 2 words. Later, when Angelo Walkley came to visit the class, he called the cricket to my field and told me to scold him back. At first, I couldn't speak, but he gave me a start, and I followed his words and scolded them back one by one. And the scolding became more and more energetic, and finally I was dragged away by Angelo Walkley. He looked at me with a smile that day. Hold your breath and go back, and secretly grow nodules. I can't be here every day. Whoever scolds you and bullies you in the future, you will go back. And if you don't go back, come and tell me. I didn't give you any grievances, and you are still angry outside. Angelo Walkley that day, her eyebrows were clear, and her eyes were shining. It was as if a hole had been torn in my heart, and what poured out was a heart of love. When I came back to my thoughts, I was woken up by Michael's phone call, and I woke up with a wet face. Wipe his face clean and answer the phone. Michael's tone was irrepressible excitement. Nina Tommy, my darling, did you misunderstand your relationship with Angelo Walkley? I'm a little confused. Aren't you online yet? Go to Weibo. Angelo Walkley personally went out to tear up the black powder. I want to die if I am handsome. If he proposes to you, you must agree. Okay, I beg you. The believer is willing to match meat and vegetables for a lifetime. Just ask you two to lock it up. After saying that, she hung up the phone, and I opened Weibo with a blindfolded face, and found that the hot searches had all changed. Pound Angelo Walkley. Pound Angelo Walkley tear black pink. Pound Angelo Walkley's mouth. Pound Angelo Walkley don't love it too much. And then there is the first hot comment on my statement. It was Angelo Walkley, who gave me a comment on the account verified by the Walkley family group. Have time to post a small essay, but don't have time to release me from the blacklist. Parted. Nina Tommy, you're doing well. This comment made my spine stiffen, as if I saw Angelo Walkley gritting his teeth. I went through those hot searches again, and found that Angelo Walkley had several rounds of wrestling with black fans on the internet and won a big victory. Black fan, this woman hooked up with 3 and 4, and she was embarrassed to block Angelo Walkley. Angelo Walkley, what? You weren't jealous if I didn't block you? Black fan, laughing to death. Take the initiative to seduce others, and talk about the unspoken rules. And don't look at what you look like. Angelo Walkley, come, let me see what you look like. Black fan, even if the unspoken rules are true, then isn't it true that she played Don Esther before and bullied her peers? Angelo Walkley, I asked her to fight. You tell me if you have any questions. Black fan, I broke up and died laughing. The big guy just played with her. I don't really think I want to marry her. Angelo Walkley, if I don't marry her, will I marry you? Blackpink, this number is too active. It can't be the sailor that Nina Tommy bought. Angelo Walkley, Green Peak Building. Tell the front desk your screen name. Come to the office to chat. Black fan, I don't care if Nina Tommy is cheap, or shameless or disgusting. Angelo Walkley, at darn 10 minutes to find out all about him. This puddle of water was completely muddied by Angelo Walkley, and the black fans were shut up by him, and finally reached the grand occasion that no one dared to speak out in the civil and military forces of the Manchu dynasty. Then there is the CP Powder New Year. Angelo Walkley's strength protects his wife. I won't say who is handsome. Those who read Nina Tommy's jokes are all dead. All dead. Angelo Walkley, I'm right here. I'll see who dares to scold my wife. My mother. These two people have to have children, and their appearance is so rebellious. I was stunned. Quietly hooked the corners of his lips, but a new comment popped up on his phone. Open the door. I froze, threw away my phone and leaned down on the cat's eye to see Angelo Walkley standing outside the door. The heart thumps and the door opens. Angelo Walkley looked down at me. So handsome. I tried to speak, but the tears fell uncontrollably, and I just stood there looking at him with teary eyes. He was stunned for a moment, then raised his hand to wipe my tears. The movements are gentle, but the mouth is unforgiving. I haven't said anything yet, but you cried first, and the moral kidnapping is kind of a game for you to understand. He pulled me in, and sat down on the couch. I stole a glance at him, happy in my heart, and my mouth was hard. What are you doing here? He tossed his blazer aside, rolled up his sleeves and said, let's talk about the bias first. As soon as I said that, I got angry again, sat away from him, and muttered in a low voice, it's you who pull the bias. What is there to say? He sneered, I'm pulling the bias. When did I deviate from you? You're so selfless. Don Esther manicure is about to scratch your face. You don't even know it. If I don't pull you out, your face will be spent. Usually I have a pimple that I have to scream all day, and my face is so dazzling that I can't cry and flood my home. I was stunned. I didn't expect this to be the reason. I felt unreasonable for a while, and I didn't want to admit defeat. Then why didn't you say it then? Angelo Walkley sneered again. Did I not say it, or did you not listen? When I chased you out, you were gone, and you didn't usually come to me so actively, and let me move out. Nina Tommy, you're the first one to kick the financier out halfway through with the people. My confidence is getting less and less, and I still quarrel with him with my neck. Then you haven't come to me for the past few days, and you don't care if you were cyber-buoyed a few days ago. Aren't you just busy getting married? What are you still looking for me for? I don't want to be 3. He dragged me over and pinched my face, his eyebrows sinking. Who told you I want to marry? Is it because the resources I gave you are too poor? Or when did I not get the gift I gave you? Did I think I was going to sell my marriage to pull resources? They all say that. You listen to this, listen to that, but you don't listen to me. Isn't it itchy? I flinched back, breaking free of his grip. You still haven't said what you've been doing these days. He looked at me and sighed. I went on a business trip to the United States, and a project collapsed, so I went over and took over. At first, I didn't know that Don Esther had caught up with Solomon, waiting for her to finish the pot. I'm afraid that black fans will come to find trouble these days, and bodyguards have been arranged near the hotel. What else do you want to hear? Come on, ask all at once. I finally asked the deepest question in my heart, will you marry me? Or do you just want me to be your canary all the time? Angelo Walkley was silent. My heart was half cold. Then he said, is there a conflict between the two? You can stay when you want, go out when you want. When have I interfered with you? I lowered my eyes. But you never wear the couple ring I chose. Angelo Walkley picked up the suit jacket that had been thrown aside and pulled out 2 couple rings from the left pocket on her chest. That's what I saw by chance when I went to Cannes on the red carpet. Not a brand. It's just a handmade product of a grandmother on the side of the road. Not expensive, but unique. I bought it when I saw that I liked it, and I basically wore it when I was with him. But he didn't wear it once. I didn't wear it because you didn't want to make it public. And this pair of rings is so special that I put it in my suit pocket every day. He got up and walked up to me, his eyes dark. I don't know if you want to get married, so I can only take you to the engagement banquet and see how you react. If you don't want to, it's 2 years late. You're good. A long temper has all been on me. Aren't you polite outside? Why are you baring your teeth on me? Are you still ripe? His tone grew lower and lower, and I looked up to meet his deep eyes, which were filled with fiery tenderness. He took me into his arms and patted me on the back. Don't make trouble. Good boy. I hugged him back and hummed softly. I can't tell what I feel at the bottom of my heart, but I have some hindsight. In the past few years, I have been favored for too long, and love has constantly bred possessiveness, so that I can't stand the possibility that he will no longer favor me, not even once. I'll admit I'm just pampered. I received Michael's message early the next morning. Not only was the previous variety show normal, but also several more businessmen. I secretly glanced at the hot search, and I was all curious about the follow-up of, open the door. The public relations team has focused all its attention in the direction of knocking CP, and has not responded to the previous black material for the time being, so it should be waiting for an opportunity. Angelo Walkley and I went back to South Bay Court, and walked out holding hands in a bright light. In the past, I would still think about avoiding suspicion, but now it's not necessary. There were people taking pictures all the time, but they were all friendly and Angelo Walkley didn't say anything. I thought that yesterday's incident should be a turning page. but I didn't expect to be able to kill me again when I got home. Angelo Walkley's stuff in the villa was gone. Clothes, watch accessories, toiletries, everything. The point is that I didn't react at all, and I thought that my family had been robbed, and I was once curious why I only stole from him and not from mine. Angelo Walkley looked at me with a smirk. Didn't you tell me to move out in a week? How dare I not listen? Maybe one day, my stuff will appear on the road. After all, I haven't paid rent, and I don't have a real estate certificate, so where can I be qualified to live in this big villa? Listening to these sour words, I am really ashamed. He moved out because he was afraid that I wouldn't want to come back, and now he is trying to trick me. I knew I didn't pay attention, and I cooperated with him by the sleeve and asked him to move back. By the afternoon everything had been restored, and I doggedly reclassified his ties by color. Angelo Walkley went to the company, and I stayed at home to make up for the variety show. After all, I was about to be a guest. I didn't expect to get a call from Denise Becker, who asked me to dinner. I was a little flattered that Denise Beecher had come to pick me up at South Bay Court because of the uproar about me lately. Angelo Walkley said you've been squatted by black powder before, so it's better to be careful. Her attitude reversed too much, and too quickly, and I don't know what kind of medicine she sells in her gourd. It wasn't until I sat down in the dining room that she raised her glass and saluted me. Nina Tommy, I used to listen to some slanderous rumors from others, and I misunderstood you a little, which caused you trouble and harm, and I solemnly apologize to you today. It was clear to me that Don Esther must have spoken ill of me to her, causing Denise Beecher to have a preconceived impression of me. I'm not a cowardly person, so I picked up my glass and touched her. At the end of the meal, I found that Denise Beecher was really nice to get along with, cheerful and honest, and he was very compatible with me. I asked her why she suddenly changed her opinion of me, and she said that she had read all the comments on cyberbullying in the past few days, and many of them were unwarranted, and at first glance, someone was manipulating, especially those who say Angelo Walkley is using me as her stand-in. Denise Beecher laughs. She grew up with Angelo Walkley and the Goldsmith brothers, and their parents had a good relationship, but she and Angelo Walkley were purely revolutionary friendships. Before, her parents intended to let them get married. Denise Beecher didn't have anyone she liked. She was very ambitious. She didn't care about marriage, and it was of course best to help her career, so she didn't express any opinions. She had thought that Angelo Walkley was just like her, but knowing that he didn't want to marry, she decided to give up on the decision. In addition, some time ago, I went to visit Don Esther, and found that she was playing a big name on the set, but many field workers talked about the recent news, and they were all upset for me, saying that I was cordial and had a good relationship with everyone. It was then that she realized that maybe things were different. I feel in my heart that being kind to others will still be rewarded with kindness. After eating, Denise Becker wanted to find a substitute driver, but unexpectedly, she ran into two brothers, Angelo Walkley and Goldsmith, who had just come out of dinner. I apologized to Gerald Goldsmith for having a fight at his engagement party that day, which was rude. He nodded lightly, so I didn't have to mind, and left first after saying a few words. Gerald Goldsmith invited us to his bar, while his eyes were fixed on Denise Becker. I looked at the atmosphere in which the two of them were clearly amiss and said aloud, Denise Beecher has a drink, so let's stop and call her a substitute driver. Gerald Goldsmith immediately stepped forward, I'll send her. I didn't care how they pulled and dragged Angelo Walkley away. On the way back I asked Angelo Walkley, is there anything wrong with them? Angelo Walkley squeezed my hand and played, can you put more thought on me? They talk on their own. You don't have to worry about it. I looked at him. Aren't you tired? He was stunned for a moment, then raised the backseat baffle and scooped me over, and said in a dangerous upward tone, are you tired of it? Nina Tommy, I think you're itching. I hooked his neck and smiled with crooked eyebrows. Not tired. Not tired for the rest of my life. He didn't say anything in the car, just smiled casually, but I cried all night in my bedroom. 3 days later, the PR team officially clarified the previous black material, each of which listed clear evidence, and Don Esther has also exposed a number of scandals. Not only was she fostered, she was hooked up with Solomon, and even many little girls, who were submerged were her hooks. The evidence is clear and organized, and Don Esther can't turn over at all. I watched the full video of that fight, and immediately thought that Denise Becker was really miserable. I never knew how she got into the melee, but after watching the video, I realized that she was dragged by Don Esther, and slapped me several times. I laughed and apologized to her on Weibo. The wind reversed, and everyone who scolded me began to apologize to me. The wind of public opinion is blowing up and down, and I really can't arouse my interest. But when I flipped through it, I saw a photo. In the picture, I was hanging Wea in a thin skirt, and Angelo Walkley was waiting for me with a down jacket, looking gentle. The photo is a bit mushy, and I can see that it has been taken for a long time, and I will still be a little green. Photo caption: I cried to death. It turned out that Angelo Walkley fell in love 2 years ago. I looked at the photo and immediately remembered that it was half a year after my debut. -3 or 4 degrees. You have to wear a thin costume to shoot exteriors, and you have to use a blower in order to be elegant. A few days after the shoot I had a fever, and called Angelo Walkley in a daze, and he came over that night. The next day, there was no role for me, and he took care of me in the hotel for a day. I'm a little better, but there's still a couple of locations to come. I'm a newcomer and don't want to delay my progress. And Angelo Walkley didn't say anything, just waited for me, every day with a down jacket. After each shot, he wrapped me between him and his down jacket. He stayed for 3 days and didn't go back until I had finished filming all the locations. The winter was particularly cold that year, but I only remember his dry and warm embrace. I looked at the photo and giggled and silently clicked save. The news fever faded away, as if everything was subsiding. My work continues, most recently to participate in a popular outdoor variety show. While I was putting on my makeup, a fire alarm suddenly sounded in the background, and thick smoke began to spread, and the surroundings suddenly became chaotic. Pushed and shoved, I was dragged into a small utility room. It's Don Esther. She wore a hooded sweatshirt, looked haggard, and had bruises at the corners of her mouth. I watched quietly, but she didn't have anything in her hand, as if she just wanted to talk to me. Nina Tommy, you're proud, aren't you? Resources, fame, love, all of them are thriving. She blocked the door, and I found a cardboard box away from her. There's nothing to be proud of. Work, life, isn't that? Don Esther looked at me and burst into laughter, laughing and laughing to tears. You don't remember me. I was sent to accompany you in the same batch, but you ended up being taken by Angelo Walkley, and I stayed in that room forever. I sometimes wonder if Angelo Walkley had taken a fancy to me in the first place. Would everything have been different? Do you know how jealous I am of you? Why should I have to endure everything when you have everything? Why? I just want to earn some money for my brother's medical bills. I was in a bit of a trance for a while. I don't remember Don Esther. There were a couple of girls in the private room that night, but I didn't have time to see who they were. I looked at her. How is your brother? Don Esther held her head high, and wiped a handful of tears. Dead. Before I could get out of the mix, he died. I looked out the window and sighed. I'm really a little luckier than you. If I hadn't met Angelo Walkley, I might not have done as well as you, and I would have been able to stick to the position of a second-tier flower. But I can be sure of one thing, since I'm already in the mire and can't help myself, I won't drag anyone into the water anyway. Don Esther fell silent suddenly, wondering if she remembered the girls who had been locked up in that private room forever through her. You know what? If I hadn't done it, I would have become an outcast a long time ago, and I don't know where it rots now. I didn't speak. I touched the door quietly, and Don Esther looked at me and didn't stop. I opened the door and heard her sigh. Human life is always different from human life. I paused and turned to look at her, who dropped an envelope at my feet. The wind outside the window ruffled her long hair. Her eyes were red, but she smiled openly. Nina Tommy, I really hate you, but you're the only one who can help me. You see, the world is so funny sometimes. I don't regret it. I don't introspect. I just want those beasts to die. With that, she jumped off the box, and I was pulled into a warm embrace. I don't know why I'm crying, but I burst into tears. Don Esther is dead. The last envelope she left me was a long list. It records most of the people involved in the leather and meat business in recent years. From the overlord contract to the compulsory wine accompaniment, a complete industrial chain has been formed. I called the police and made the list public, and it was signed by Don Esther. This incident has attracted widespread attention and great attention from all walks of life, and the police have quickly filed a case, and the relevant persons involved in the case have been investigated and dealt with one by one. Many people began to remember Don Esther, and many people did not buy it. I didn't follow any further. I didn't experience her pain, and I couldn't approve of her actions. But I hope that the girl who was locked in the small room that night will be free. Life and work continue in a step-by-step manner. Half a year later, I won the award for Best Actress, but I didn't expect that the person who presented me with the award was Angelo Walkley. As soon as he appeared, the audience was boiling. Not only fans, but even the actors and hosts in the audience were collectively knocking CP. He handed me the trophy with a smile in his eyes. Congratulations to Nina Tommy, and I wish you all the best in your future acting career. Another wave of cheers. I took the trophy with a little heat in my eyes, and I slowed for a few seconds before I made a speech. When I went on stage to accept the award, I was with another actor, and when I got off the stage, he reflexively reached out to help me. Angelo Walkley glanced at him. His eyes suddenly widened, and he retracted his hand and hurried away. I walked up to Angelo Walkley, and went down with him. Funny, asked him, "What are you doing to scare people?" Angelo Walkley put his arm around me and walked forward, his face unchanged. What did I scare him? I just see that his hands are white. Sitting in my seat, I secretly glanced at the hot search, and sure enough, Weibo has turned the sky. The actor's action of shrinking his hand just now was made into a GIF and forwarded it wildly. Some sharp-eyed netizens found out that my ring was not sponsored by the brand, and they speculated whether Angelo Walkley had successfully proposed. Actually, we have already obtained the certificate. One day last week, I woke up and found that I had an extra ring on my hand, not the one I bought. I asked him why he didn't use the one I had bought before, and it was the only pair in heaven and on earth. As he put on his watch, he said, "This is the only one in heaven and on earth. Don't like it." Actually, I liked it very much, but I deliberately asked him, "Can I change it if I don't like it?" He smiled and pinched my waist. "You try to grow 10 more fingers today, and I'll fill them for you." Little money fans. I was delayed for an event that day, and we went to get my certificate early the next morning. The awards ceremony was over, and Angelo Walkley draped her coat over me, with a smile in her eyes. "Come home, Mom." Extra, male protagonist perspective. The kittens have been tempered recently, and they have been baring their teeth more and more often, so they have matured. Compared to the previous appearance of always blindly obeying for fear of getting into trouble, now it is more vivid. The only headache is that she is acting stupidly, full of white moonlight stand-in stocks, and the resources given to her in the future will be less such dross. I haven't seen each other for 3 months, but I finally came back, and before I could say a few words, I was pulled by Gerald Goldsmith to talk to him. It's annoying. Like Denise Becker, just 4 words. More than 20 years stunned, can't open his mouth. Deserves his brother is married. He is still single. I wanted to push him with the news of the marriage between my parents, but I acquiesced in the news of the outflow. I don't know if he's progressing, and I almost got myself into it. The kitten was so angry that he threw away the ring, turned his head and ran. By the time I picked up the ring and chased it out, there was no one to be seen, and the only phone call I received was to tell me to move out. Fortunately, they still know to kick me out. Instead of secretly being wronged themselves, I wanted to go directly to her, but the United States project had problems at this time, and I didn't know what to do with this group of people. I flew to United States overnight and told Darren to follow her before leaving. Darren is a bit useful, knowing that bodyguards will be arranged as soon as the black material comes out. I watched the full video, checked Don Esther, and knew she had a backhand, so I didn't care. Now the kitten must be crying secretly in the hotel. Difficult. It was a few days before the situation stabilized, and I flew back immediately. I really don't know why her fans' combat power is so weak. 1 or 2 can't win by scolding, and they are suppressed by black fans. This little thing requires me to do it myself. I suggest that fans come to me to sign up for a class and learn how to get black fans. The contact information is closed in the small black room, and I can only contact her on Weibo. Anyway, I saw it. The kitten's eyes are swollen from crying, and I haven't cried like this in the past 3 years combined. I resisted the idea of coaxing her first. She will always think about this matter, and she still has to make it clear one by one. Seeing her quarreling while having a weak heart, she obviously loves to death and has a hard mouth, which is quite cute. It's a headache too. She always listened to a lot of people, and she didn't want to listen to me. The temper I raised for her ended up all on me, but it's finally coaxed. Kittens are still the cutest when they smile. The end.